Speed painting tutorial.
Spiky bits.
Welcome back, hobby maniacs. I'm Rob Bear from spikybits.com, and in this video, well, this is an intro for two almost identical tutorial videos here on the channel. One on how to speed paint a Space Marine, and one how to speed paint Marvel Crisis Protocol miniatures, which you can use for pretty much anything out there, whether it needs a little bit of pre-shading work with pouches, metals, and things like that, or if you just ready to go with the speed paint because there is no additional base coating needed in the case of Marvel Crisis Protocol. Now, I do want to mention, because there has been a little, we'll call it a kerfuffle out there on the internet about speed paint and about how it's so terrible. Oh no, it's terrible. It's actually not terrible. Speed paint is a one coat solution, y'all. So doing multiple coats is not only silly, but expensive, because you don't need to buy this to do multiple coats when you already have acrylic paint. You need to allow significant time, as Goobertown Hobbies video showed folks, 6 to 8 hours between coats. If you want to do coats, additional coats of speed paint, you don't need to. It's a one coat solution, y'all. Hit it up, you're done. Let it dry, you're good. Like, that's the whole point to speed paint, not to sit around and wait 6 to 8 hours. Once it's dry, matte coat it, put it on the table, and have some fun, because that's what it's all about, is getting your miniatures on the table faster. Now, these two techniques combine something called values highlighting, which is super simple, but you can just fast forward to just the speed painting part if that's your thing, because you can just simply matte coat or base coat this stuff with a can of Army Painter white or bone or gray or whatever color tickles your hobby pickle. And then once it's dry, of course, you know, it's primer, you need to let it dry. Hit it with the speed paint and you're done. But this technique that a lot of people were asking about in our original kind of Army Painter initial review of the speed paint, a lot of folks asked, hey, how do you get that cool look on your Marvel Crisis Protocol figures, and on, you know, can you do it with Space Marines and stuff, and how does this paint look over metals? And I'm going to show you all that, but do yourself a favor and also watch the Goobertown Hobbies video, because he shows you what all of these colors look like, again, over different types of primer coats and also metals as well. And he does a whole lot of work on that. It's an amazing video. I can't even imagine how long it took him to do, but that is definitely worth checking out as well. So let's jump into it. I don't know which video you clicked on, but we're about to jump into the tutorial right now.
So the very first step in this process is to get some white. A lot of people say zenithal, but it's not necessarily zenithal. You just really want to get a nice contrast, and I say contrast, not GW, contrast the paint, the contrast between light and dark, which is basically, you know, what the speed paint is going to stick to. So to get there, I have three different things. I have three different go-tos. Well, actually four. So we got the new Army Painter stuff, and sometimes I like to use this one right here, the Cadre Gray, or the matte white, or I like to use ink sometimes, or depending on the project, I don't know where I put it. Depending on the project, I'll use the Pro Acrylic from Monument primer too. So my original stuff, I used this, and then I used for more recent stuff like Deadpool and things, I use this Cadre Gray, and I like it because it's got a little blue pop to it. And then there's just the you know, basic matte white. Today we're going to use the DW stuff here, and I think overall, using all four over the last couple months, I think I prefer, to be quite honest, an actual ink. It's instead of paint, because what happens is it doesn't run. Or it doesn't splatter, I guess, as much. So these things are really cool because they just have a little bit. You just pop this open and just drop. Try not to get any of that crusty crap in there. And you're just going to want to fill up to about the top of that reservoir right there. Probably a little bit more. Alright, looks like it's full because I put a little bit of flow improver in there. This is a little crusty, so I gotta watch that getting all over everything. But once you get that, just do a little quick back flush. What I like to do a lot of times is I'll take clean brush here. And we'll get in here and mix it so we know we got a nice, good base coat ready to go. And that is everything we need right there just to get started. So let's clean this up. Now, don't get me wrong, that whole zenithal top down, there's actually something to that for sure. So we're gonna definitely do that because we want to actually concentrate on the areas where, you know, from the top down, it's going to get, you know, light, basically, like simulating a light source. So we hit all that first, just to be sure that we've got what we're looking for. And you notice using the ink, it doesn't really splatter as much. I think that's a speckle. Oh, maybe not. I don't know. We'll have to get in there and fix that. But for the most part, it doesn't speckle. It doesn't kind of go everywhere like sometimes some of the other stuff does if you don't turn down the PSI enough. And it's just a lot easier to use. So we're going to get in here and we're going to get all the zenithals that you've seen on a million tutorials out there. And we're just going to do that really good and get a nice solid coat. And the shield we're going to do something a little different on. So once we get all that pounded out, make sure you hit your base. There's a little bit of an optional step, and I guess before we keep going with this whole airbrushing thing, you know, I just want to make the comment, you literally don't have to use an airbrush on this. You can use a heavy dry brush. It will do just as good as well on something like this. Matter of fact, I have a marine right here that would work pretty well. I mean, it's a little dark. It probably needs to be dry brushed a little bit heavier, but this would work just the same for this process. So just keep in mind, you don't have to go out and be like, oh, I don't want to buy an airbrush, whatever. Hey, it's cool. Just use a super heavy dry brush, which one of the next steps is to use a light dry brush on the edges, which I'm going to show you. So we'll kind of explain dry brushing if you've never heard of that either. So the next step is to do some cutbacks, totally optional. If you feel like you're in a good spot, like Annie down here begging for food, then you can just keep going with to the next step here. But I'm gonna do a few cutbacks with a little matte black air from Army Painter. I just put a little drop of flow improver in it, and it should be good to go. I think I just might have sat there for a minute, so we'll give it a quick back push. Yeah, now we're good to go. And all this is just kind of an optional step to just get in there and maybe hit some areas that you're not 100% happy with contrast wise, right? So maybe like, you know, cracks, maybe like this vent, something like that. Just any area that you feel like maybe you got a little too much overspray on, or any place that maybe you need a little bit of you know, shadow to kind of lighten up and create those values between the light and the dark, because that, no matter what, is going to shine through when you use a little bit of this speed paint on it. You're going to want those difference in values. Again, totally optional step, but this is kind of what I ended up with when I went back and did a few cutbacks, you know, kind of in the cuts, just to give it a little bit of contrast between light and darkness. From there, I matte coated him and I let him set overnight. Now, when it comes to matte coat, I've used Tester's dull coat, like I said in our, or I'm going to say in our other video here. This is basically what it looks like. This stuff is hard to find, but they have started re-releasing it. This is actually gloss coat, and there's dull coat. You may want to write which one is which on the bottom, because the only thing that will tell you is this cap here. So if you lose the cap, you might not know which is which, and that could be kind of terrible. So we just hit it with dull coat. We'll let it dry overnight. Now we're ready to do some washes. Oh, if you can't find it, you can find the Tamiya clear coat that's available at most hobby towns, hobby lobbies, things like that out there. The classic, you know, model stores and things like that. So now we're going to give him a glaze of black here, which is basically like Nuln Oil or something like that. We're just going to fill this up a little ways, and then we're going to take our mixture, you've probably seen this in the past on this channel, of 50-50 flow improver in glazing medium. You can get glazing medium in large and small containers from places like Hobby Lobby, and this is basically what's going to allow the acrylic wash to kind of spread out and get in the cracks and things like that. It's not quite the same as speed paint, because speed paint has a resin
component to it that's going to do the same thing but continue to do it, and it's a very aggressive sort of thing that takes a little bit longer to dry. As we talked about, you know, some people are like, hey, you know, it reactivates and things like that. Well, like we said, let your paint dry. Don't be a dummy. Let your paint dry. And if you're trying to paint more over top of a one coat solution such as speed paint, as we've talked about already in the intro, well, that's kind of dumb, to be quite honest. Like, it's not made to do that. So getting mad about it doing that is kind of silly. So the purpose of this is to get in all the cracks and do the work, do all the heavy lifting for the speed paint that's going to come along and actually pop and reap the rewards from all of this pre-shading here, this values highlighting, as they like to call it. So just nice and easy, just put on a nice little glaze of that, and you can see immediately on the area like the shield there, and just start work top to bottom on your miniature and get a nice smooth coat. Rinse your brush out. If you have any glops, any glip glops or any Klingons or anything that you're not happy about, you can just come in with a little wet or moist brush, I suppose. If you feel like you've got too much in one area there, just dab it off, and you can see right there, as soon as this finishes drying, which will dry a lot quicker than speed paint, of course, then you're good to go. Now at that point, you can choose to matte varnish it again. I like to matte varnish as I go because I don't really get time to sit down a whole lot, but you can be perfectly okay at this point because this is an acrylic based product. Speed base is not acrylic based, or speed paint is not acrylic based, so there's not going to be any issue between these two components. But again, as people have pointed out, if you don't let your speed paint dry, when you put speed paint on top of wet speed paint, well, you get a mess. Don't do that. Just paint like normal. If you're going to do it the other way, use acrylic paint. So once all of that dries out, you can see what you're left with. A really nice, very, very crisp looking miniature here at this point. Now, at that last step, before you glaze it, if you really want to, you know, you can always do the dry brush and things like that and get it really, really poppy. I did a quick dry brush and got it poppy, you know, before the last step, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. All these areas are still going to get really, really popped very well. So once all that dries up, you're going to get something that looks very similar to this right here on the ground and all over your model too. Now, if you wanted a little bit crisper than this, you could do a very light dry brush before you do your wash. Make sure you matte coat that, because you don't, you know, with not that much actual paint on the model, it could come up. So if, you know, that's an optional step if you so desire, but just hitting it with the glaze will really kind of do a lot of this work right here. And you can see where it's already done all the delineation and the definition of all of this area here, so that we're pretty much basically ready for the speed paint. So we're going to start with magic blue real quick here. We're going to grab a little on our, this is actually a synthetic brush, because I like using the synthetic brushes because they have a nice snap to their bristles and things when you're using it here. Now, we're not going to try to get, let's see, I like looking at the box art too, so because otherwise I couldn't tell you what is supposed to be white, what is supposed to be black or red on this miniature, and what's supposed to be white. So we're just going to get in here, and because we're using such a thin brush, hopefully we can not screw this up. And if you get any on the areas that you don't want it, like on the top of that white star, well, as we talked about, you can just wipe it right off because it hasn't dried yet. Yet another bonus to the one coat speed paint system. So we're just going to get in here and we're going to meticulously block all this out. There isn't any more red on this, or any more blue on the shield. Oh, what else is there blue? Oh, well, you can do the face, of course, or the head right there. I think the gloves are going to be red, the boots are going to be red, but this whole area in here, all of this will be very easy to do, not the belt. So we'll just get in there and we'll start blocking it from the waist down, just like you're doing a base coat, nice and controlled. You don't, this isn't a wash, this isn't a race, just nice and controlled. Just get in there, block it all out, no glip glops, and you'll be good to go. All right, so about 10 or 15 minutes later, depending on how fast you base coat things, you will get something very similar to this, referencing the box art, of course, because, well, the box art is super helpful to figure out what colors things are supposed to be where, right? So yeah, super easy. We used holy white on the white areas there, including the shield and that middle ring, the Avenger symbol. I think I might have used, yeah, I think I used it right there and all those areas. And of course we used the magic blue on the blue areas, blood red for all the red areas, graveyard gray for the base. And I think I kind of splotched on that a little bit on the grate right there. Hardened leather on all his leather areas of his harness and his pouches, and dark wood for the skin right there. So overall, I'm pretty happy with how it all turned out, how it all kind of came together in like pretty much no time flat. Like I said, at this point, it's all about how long it takes you to base coat a miniature very carefully. And then of course, I just left it to dry overnight and matte coated it in the morning, and it is good to go. And here we are, you know, showing it off, and it was really fun. This stuff is super easy to use. So from there, you know, if you're interested in a one-coat paint solution, not like Citadel's Contrast, this actually works. It's designed to work in one coat just as I've showed you. Then hopefully the SpeedPaint is for you. There will be singles out by the time this video hits. I think the mega set will be out. Of course, there's a starter set already as well. The only thing I don't like about the starter set is it doesn't come with the black. It comes with this Grave Lord Gray, unfortunately, but it's got everything else in there that you might need to decide for yourself if you know you want to spend your hobby dollars on the full set here, and then you can you know, pass that set on to somebody else that might be perhaps, you know, thinking about if it's for them, and save them some hobby dollars, I suppose. So you can of course pick this up from the Army Painters website, your local game store. They want you to buy it from the local game store, of course, or, you know, online, wherever you spend your hobby dollars pretty routinely. But just remember, yes, it is a one-coat solution. It's not really designed to go over top of other colors. Now, that being said, there is a great video over at Goobertown Hobbies where he shows you what these colors look like on every type of, you know, base coat, and different types of grays and whites and anything that you would probably base coat your miniatures with, also over metals. And then he also uses multiple coats of these, allowing 6 to 8 hours to dry between coats. Now, just keep in mind, that isn't very speed painty, but you can do it. Just be very aware that, hey, this stuff takes a while to dry, and respect the product and its, you know, one coat kind of nature right there, because there really is nothing else out there like it. Contrast is vastly, completely different, and very inconsistent across the board. As much as I have seen using it, you know, I basically just used it for lights and viewports and things like that, because it was very unpredictable and hard to use, you know, on a more consistent basis. So that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching our how to paint Marvel Crisis Protocol figures using values highlighting, and also the new SpeedPaint mega set. Of course, you can always just primer your Marines, hit them with the speed paint, and be done, and skip a few of the steps in there. But I feel like the extra time, if you're gonna batch these guys out, is totally worth it. And I mean, it is just very, very striking, the depth and all the extra, you know, poppiness you can really add, in almost comic book style, that you can add to your miniatures doing it that way. If you liked that video feature, consider supporting us over at Patron.com and get back in the mail each month a miniature crate full of some of the stuff we review here, as well as some of the top 3D artist designs out there too, to help support what they're doing. Plus, discount coupon codes from some of those same manufacturers. They're yours to keep, whether you cancel or stay on. It's totally up to you. Obviously, we want to keep you as happy as possible. So check it out over at patreon.com/spikybits.